Today's episode is sponsored by the 2023 Rhode Island Business Summit, presented by Stella Business Concepts on September 21st at the Event Factory in Warwick, Rhode Island. Join us to connect with B2B vendors, amazing networking opportunities, and guest speakers like Patricia Raskin, who will talk to you about podcasting for your business, leadership with Mary Sullivan, or customer retention with me, Erica Sicosio, and more. We have panelists, and we also have a very fun, amazing lunch and learn with Rhode Island comic Poppy Champlin. Tickets are on sale now. Visit our website at www.stellabusinessconcepts.com. See you there. Hey guys, Erica Sicosio here with Practical Biz Podcast. And today we are going to talk about the power of the Black dollar and why it matters to the business community. We are joined with our very special guest, Danielle Laurent. I met Danielle at the Small Business Expo in Boston. He is fantastic. So we had a little bit of an opportunity to talk there, and I love his message and everything he's doing. So I really thought it would be fantastic to have him on our show. And so I stalked him down, sent him out an email a couple of times and said, let's make it happen. So I'm really happy to have him on our show. Just a little background. He has 20 years in the customer service field, and then left that field and started going out to educate entrepreneurs and the small business community about things that are really important for the Black business community and what everybody can do to help. And that was a message I really wanted to get behind. So welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
He also does a lot of other things. We will get to at the end of the show, but he does a lot of things really. But we'll get into that a little bit more. But so yeah, welcome to the show. So tell us a little bit about what is the Black Dollar movement for people who don't even know what that is?
So Black Dollar, it started as a messaging statement, right? And I think as I reflected on years of me growing up when I was younger, and there was certain things that I always thought and I always wanted, my community to really compete, right? And you hear like Black excellence and blah, blah, blah. And, sometimes that's just a hashtag and people don't live by that. Right. And so for me, it was a matter of when I would go to different restaurants or different businesses, Black businesses, people of color, and, say it's supposed to be open at 10, right? And you get there at 10 and it opens at, the person's walking in at 10. So now it's opening at 10:10, right? Or you go to a restaurant and you're sitting down for 15 minutes and no one's come over to say hi or give you your drink of water or anything. So I would look at all these things and I'm like, and there's different type of people. Some people would lean into the experience of it and turn negative and like start talking and doing word of mouth and bad publicity and maybe going on Yelp and the internet, whatever. I started leaning into, well, why are these things happening, right? And I think that there was a lack of processes that people focus on because they're so focused on getting the actual product out. So that kind of spiraled the whole thought process. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do, but I knew that I wanted to help that. And I worked in a dermatology office in Chestnut Hill, which is an affluent community in Boston, close to Needham, Newton. And, I was high-level management, supervised over 15 people, did a lot of the complaints when patients would come in. Doctors are infamous for running late, right? There's nothing you can do anywhere in the country. Every doctor is somehow going to be 45 minutes behind. But if you're 5 minutes behind, you have to reschedule, right?
Yep.
So everything that I learned there, I wanted to try to apply into places that didn't have those resources. And so I was there for a little over 19 years, and I went to school, Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, and studied advertising and marketing. So I think there was just always things that I to put a button on, I guess, why, we're all born and we're all going to die, right? And I think how you live in between is important. And so that little dash. And so for me, it's a matter of I want to be of service. And, I'm just trying in my own little way to be of service to people that are in need and willing to, and I guess the trick is finding the people who need the help because they may not know that they need the help. Yeah, so that's the trick.
Yeah. And finding that out about you makes a lot of sense why I was instantly drawn to you. And the other thing is around that customer service, because I'm the same way. I go notice things that other people don't notice, because we're so service driven. And so we notice those things immediately where some people don't. But as you said, it's so important, an integral part of running a business and the difference between success and not success, right?
Especially with, AI and all that stuff coming out. And this is even before those talks. But I think, everything, like people are focused on automating and trying to, cut costs and all these things, but nothing is better than the customer experience, right? And if you have a great experience, so talk about doctor's offices, when you call to make the appointment, if that's seamless and you can get an appointment within a couple of weeks and the person was gracious and explained to you that you need a referral and, this, that, and the third, and we checked your insurance and there's a discrepancy, you maybe need to call your insurance provider and clear this up. And they give you all this stuff. And you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know. Thank you so much. Then you come in and you park and it's easy to park, right? You come in, it's easy to find. You're lost in a building, someone directs you. You go in, the person at the front desk is like, hi, welcome to the practice, da-da-da-da. Give you your papers, fill it out. I'm so sorry, I left my insurance card. No problem. I mean, you can send it to us later. Everything was perfect. And then the doctor is 40 minutes behind. You'll be a little more forgiving because everything else was so great, right? And so a restaurant, you come in, the decor, the temperature, you're not like freezing, you're not hot and ripping your clothes off like Nelly stripping, and everything is great. And then the food comes and there's a piece of hair in it, or the chicken's not, cooked properly, right? You'll be like, you're more willing to give another chance if all those other things are checked. But if everything failed and then this comes and you're like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to, really lean with and help with. And I think a lot of the back end stuff, to me, in my brain, is very easy fixes, right? It's simple. It's very easy fixes, but I realize that it's not easy for everyone.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And most of those things that you mentioned don't cost any money.
No.
They don't cost any investment, a little bit of time, a little bit of training, a little bit of paying attention to details.
Everything.
Yeah.
And if it's bad training, that's going to dictate the end results.
Yeah.
So
when I met you, you had talked to me a little bit about some stats. And I remember you talked to me a little bit about the money that comes into a Black community and how quickly it leaves. So can you share that a little bit with the listeners?
So ironically, I pulled it up on my phone, and I don't know how it's going to look on camera if I read it from my phone. Well, is it going to look crazy? But I want it to be accurate. Okay.
Well,
So I pulled it up because, again, preparation is important.
Yeah.
All right. So according to, it was a Black Star Project study, wrote the racial wealth gap. So a dollar circulates in the Black community 6 hours, 20 days in the Jewish community, 30 days in the Asian community. Blacks have an estimated $1.3 trillion gross national income, but only 2% is recirculated in the Black community. And that's as of a study that was done in 2020.
Yeah.
Right. And so 6 hours as opposed to 20 days, like that's just a massive difference.
Massive, yeah.
And so when people, some people are familiar when they hear that and they're like, oh yeah, I heard that. And some people are like, holy granola, and they're like, what? And so there's different reasons for it. And so obviously there's a certain level of systematic barriers that have been in place, right? And redlining and different things. But for me, my approach for this is intentionality amongst our community in particular, right? And then for everyone else. And so the same way if you go into Little Italy in whatever major city, right? Or if you go into Chinatown, right? You can go into Chinatown, and I don't believe that you're Asian, right? But you can go into Chinatown and spend your dollars and whatever, right? And whether you go into the grocery store, you go into the nail shop, or you go into the travel agency, or you go into the bank, that money in that plaza, and there's literally a ton of examples where there's an actual insulated community where the money is literally circulating. You can get everything you need with the exception of maybe a Chanel bag, right?
Yep.
But you can get everything you need. For us in the Black community, it's not set up that way. And I think historically, you know, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, that was a real example of economic empowerment and generational wealth and different examples that could have really impacted me, right? And then it intentionally was destroyed because of the thought of that and the thought of the progression of, you know, and so I think there's certain things, and what I try to do is not just make blanket statements where people, you know, so a blanket statement is, you know, one of the fastest ways of generational wealth is buying a house, right? But if you're working at X store, right, and you're making $10 an hour, that's like, how do I even get to that point? Like, what are you talking about? How do I, you know, I can barely pay my $1,700 rent for one bedroom and a half a bath.
Yeah.
I have to wash up in the sink. You know, you're talking about buying a house. So for me, when I talk about Black dollar and circulating a dollar in the Black community, it's thinking about, so things are tangible. So think about your week. Think about whether you want to do 5 days or 7 days, and think about how you spend your money and what you're spending your money on. And so if you are a coffee drinker, right, and you buy coffee every single day, whether you go to Dunkin' Donuts or you go to Starbucks or wherever you go, if there's a Black-owned coffee shop, right, go there once, right, and try that. Or, you know, if you go to a nail salon, right, and you particularly go to a big chain nail salon or a big chain massage parlor or whatever it is, and just incorporating that. And that same model can be applied to whether it's a woman-owned business, whatever, but it has to be intentional. If we're not intentional about doing it, it just will never happen. And so that's why part of Black Dollar, the motto is intentionality is the only option, because it just is. You know, I think the days of just kind of happenstance and, you know, over time, like, we'll figure it out. And the motto of, like, you know, rising tide, what is it? Rising tide lifts all boats? Not sinks. I'm thinking sinks all boats. But that's kind of a Freudian. So yeah, lifts all boats. And it's like, I don't know if that's the case when there's boats that have holes in them, right? So we have to be intentional about the efforts. And for me, and especially when George Floyd was murdered, there was a lot of guilt, right? And there was a lot of confusion. And I had a lot of conversations with people called me, friends of mine and people who I respect and love, was like, you know, what can we do? And I didn't really have what the answers are. But again, intentionality is important. So instead of having a sign in your window that says Black Lives Matter, or having a sign in your lawn or a bumper sticker, or, you know, when Amazon was putting it on their front page, right? Instead of having that, to me, I can care less about that stuff. But what I do care about is when Tyrone applies for your job and you look at his resume and it says Tyrone Jenkins and you turn it around, right? Because of the name. Or Jessica Smith, who's Black, but the name doesn't really read, but she's from Roxbury, and you turn it around, right? Or someone has a product that will be good for your store and have a different level of diversity that can address a different population, and you don't give it a shot because it's not the same as what you've been doing. So for me, like, I'm just not really interested in that. And I think I had to internally reflect, even when President Obama was in office, and I wasn't so into politics as much. I mean, I guess I'm more into it now, right? I mean, you have to be. But I think myself and a lot of others were so happy that there was a Black president. And so we kind of just was like, oh, man, good, baby. We just kind of, you know, but the symbolism of it, like, that's the time when, if we were organized, which I feel like a lot more organization happened after the fact, But when the person is in position in office, that's when you hold them accountable. That's when you're up there every day knocking on the door saying, hey, that's when you're sitting at the table and you pull out your pad and you're like, this is what the plan is. This is what we need, because everyone else did it, right? And so I'm not really interested in the symbolism piece. However, the symbolism is important because my son, who is 15 now, President Obama was the only president that he knew. Right. And so what that does for him growing up, who knows? I can't even speak to.
Sure. But he knows it's possible.
Yeah. And so when people say, oh, President Obama didn't do anything for blacks, and like, I don't know if I'm well versed to be able to have that discussion. And I respect people to have those opinions. Well, he did more for this community. He did more for, I get all of it. Right. But him being in office and leading and being, to me, someone who was empathetic and who was respectful and who was kind and who was thoughtful. Those are things that like I teach my son, right? Like if you make a mistake or if you offend someone, because intentionality, intentionality versus impact is a real thing. So I can have good intentions of coming here and say, hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jessica. Right? And you're like, that's not my name. Oh, I'm so sorry. Right? That's like a normal exchange. But when you say that's not my name, and I'm like, all right, well, yeah, I'll call you. Like, it's like what? You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that those things of seeing that, like, that's important, because the way I lead is to be kind and to be accountable and to try to help and not tear down, right? So,
Yeah. So we're lucky in Rhode Island that we have the Rhode Island Black Business Association, which Lisa runs. And so here in Rhode Island, there is a large number of Black business owners who are kind of working together and trying to coordinate and trying to implement and also knock on doors and do all of those things. But I think that when we think about diversity, I think it isn't just Black people in Black communities that should support Black businesses. Mm-hmm. It should be all of us, right? And so I think that too, that intentional is everybody.
Well, that's, it's one community can't be at its full potential if other communities are suffering from it.
Yeah.
Right. So if we are on a main street and this is where everyone comes, and whenever people are coming for conventions and stuff, and this is what, like, when people think of Boston, they think of Newbury Street and Back Bay and Copley, right? You're not thinking of Jamaica Plain and Mattapan and Roxbury and Dorchester, but like those are thriving communities,
sure, right?
And those are opportunities to actually be with culture and be with, whether it's in Dorchester and Fields Corner, and there's a heavy Asian population, right? I'm broad stroking because I can't think of I can't think in particular, right? But it's so much that you're missing if you just kind of come to this place. Like going to New York and just going to Times Square,
yeah,
that's not a representative of what New York is.
Sure.
Like you're seeing like freaks. And literally, right? You're seeing like people, and no disrespect to him, but you're seeing like people in their underwears and like, a big Tickle Me Elmo, and they're like dancing. It's like,
well, it's a show city.
That's not what New York is. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and if that's what you want to do, that's a shame, because you're missing
on some of the other pieces that
like
enrichment, and you need some enrichment. Yeah. What do you think the best business advice that you would have for Black business owners?
How much time do I? Well, so I think we have to compete, and it gets back to what the reference that I made about being open at 10 and you show up at 10 o'clock or 9:55, right?
Holding yourself to a higher standard.
Yeah, and like, and just think and assess. You know what? I'm going to insert this because, so my I hate giving disclaimers before. My wife has told me to stop saying this. It's like, uh-oh, dun, dun, dun. So I believe in it, so it's hard for me to stop saying it. However, I've taken her stop saying that, and I'm trying to refine it a little better.
Okay.
I think, let's use the example of going to like pop-ups and trade show, not trade shows, but pop-up shops. When you see like 4 or 5 tables and they're like selling the same thing, the same things, to me, that's doing a disservice. Instead of assessing a need and trying to fill that, right? Instead of just like, this is something that I like and this is what I'm going to sell. But there's a certain thing to, I see that you used a rubber band for your hair, right? It's like, I can never find my scrunchie or whatever the name is, scrunchie, right?
Yeah.
I can never find my scrunchie. So you like, you know what? So if I can make a scrunchie bracelet that's fashionable, and I'm giving something away, right? A scrunchie bracelet that's fashionable that you can wear, and you can also take it off and put it on your hair.
Yeah.
That's filling a need that you didn't know that a person needed. And it's not so much of an impulse buy of I'm buying black and you'll never buy this thing again. You're just buying it. So for me, when I see that, I'm excited about the entrepreneurship, but I'm also like, it's just, how many, I bought a lot of this stuff and I'll look in my cabinet and I never really use it, and it's just, I just would encourage people to, on that level of the pop-ups, to be mindful and look at a need and try to fill that. And also make sure that your stories intertwine with it. Because if it's a situation where you were using all these different products and you were going to dermatologist and your child was breaking out and they had bad acne and they were scratching themselves at night and they were bleeding and you couldn't figure it out and you literally went in your kitchen sink and put all the stuff together and it cleared everything up, and then you went to the schools and gave it out to the parents and they loved it, like that's a story and you can sell that, right? But if you're just, I'm making this product and I'm also working for the MBTA and I'm selling this on the side, and it's like, I don't know if I want to put that on my skin. My skin turns green. What happens then? And the thing that we don't have as far as small businesses when we get into the beauty space, and it's $1 billion industry, so I get it.
Yeah.
We don't have the hours and the hundreds and thousands and millions of dollars of R&D and research and development. We don't have that. So the research and development is what, right? That's important, at least to me. And so I would say to compete, to think of making the ultimate customer service experience and whatever that means for your industry, right? So, I saw a video a long time ago and I use it when I spoke at the expo, because I had a workshop on customer service. There's a video I saw a long time ago where a guy was he owned like fast food chains, and he said, give them the pickle. And so very short story of the point of it is, somebody wrote him a letter and complained because he was known for giving a side of pickles and they loved it and they would always go looking forward to it. And when they went one day and they asked for a side of pickles, the person was like, oh, that'd be 75 cents or whatever it is. And they were like, they lost it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what was going on in their lives for them to lose it over that.
Yeah.
The point is,
Yep.
It's like they just felt the way about it. And then when he heard it, he's like, what? Like, who made that happen? Who decided? And he's like, you can't do that. Give them the pickle.
Yeah.
So the point is, he used sanitation workers, garbage sanitation workers, they pick up the trash.
Mm-hmm.
So he used an example of their pickle is when they would drive by and collect the trash and dump the bins and they see people trying to start the lawnmowers, they would go and start it for them. That was their way of giving the pickle, right? So whatever that is for your business, figure out what the pickle is and give it. Because then it makes a person be like, wow, like I 2 thumbs up, 5 stars, right? But when you're just so focused on, yeah, come in, give me your cash.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leave.
Yeah.
I got to get the next one. I got to turn the next table over. It's like, for me, it's like, it's pass or fail.
Yeah.
I hear the nature sounds in the background.
Yeah, we're right across from a fire station. We didn't think that part through, but it's interesting. It's interesting of what you're saying. One of the workshops that I do that I'm booked the most is on customer retention and taking care of your current customer, because we're always, so fixated on finding more.
Yeah.
And I really am like, take care of the ones you have.
You're not
That will grow
servicing-
your business.
Yeah. And, it's, and I get, and I've always felt this way, even back, I don't think it happens so much now, but, remember like with cell phones, when it was always like, oh, new customers, 3 months free and, 10,000
Forget
free
about
minutes.
the loyalty
Yeah.
from,
And so I would call and be like, hey, I've been with you guys for 3 years. We don't have any.
Sorry.
And it's like, that makes me feel, so then I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to cancel. And then I'll call you back tomorrow. Now I'll be a new customer.
Cox and Verizon played that game for a very long time, right?
Yeah. And it was some loss in the market share. So,
What successes have you found since you have started your journey working with other folks?
Successes. So obviously successes is relative, right? And so it all depends. But I think knowing that I've been able to help small businesses with things that to me, again, were very like, wow, like you never thought to put that in, right? And now they're implementing it and thriving in a way that they weren't doing before I came into their lives.
Yeah.
Right. And one example, I give 2 examples. One example is I was working with someone who has like a more like healthy food options. And every time it happened with me directly, but every time people would go there, it would be different variations of the same thing. And,
To no consistency.
no. And after like the 6th time, I'm like, so one day I was like, do you have like instructions on how to make said things? I'm like, no. I'm like,
Yeah.
and that was the face. Like,
Yeah. Right.
um,
And even from the pricing strategy, well, how did you price it then? If you don't know how much of this, that, the other thing.
well,
Wing it.
well, and so I think to that point, I think that was done where it was like, oh, and to her credit, I think it was a lot of that stuff. But then when you do all that and then you leave it to you to make said thing, and now you're using triple the, now whatever you did is off. Right. And so what I said was like, well, franchises, like you can go to McDonald's in, the projects in Texas to Times Square to Paris, and those fries and those burgers are going to taste exactly the same. Right. There's no like mixing it and putting some adobo on it and some and a little bit of habanero. And, you put a little bit of A1 sauce. Like there's no. You're buying into this franchise. Right? You want to go rogue, then you start your own.
Yeah.
So what I told her is there's consistency is important. Like if I'm experiencing it and I'm a fan of the brand and I'm supportive of the brand, you have to understand that there's a person that is coming for the first time and they like it and they're going to come again and they're going to be turned off. And they're not going to give you the compassion to not tweet about that or not tell 5 friends at a cocktail party. And then there was another situation with a landscaping company that I was working with. They were actually doing my lawn and doing some stuff. And, I would refer them to different people and got them additional clients. And a couple of times, like they would leave like the grass clippings, they would put them in a bag and it would be tilted over and like the grass clippings would be all over the driveway. Right. And I'm like, and so I text them, and this happened a couple of times. I text them like, are you coming back? Because when I come home, I'm like, oh, they're probably coming back. Maybe he's like, no, we're done. I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, no, we're done. I took a picture of it. I'm like, are you sure you're done? He's like, oh my God, I'm mortified. And I guess his people didn't, but I was like, so, and I just immediately on the spot, I was like, call me when you get a minute. And I said, going forward, what you should do is after you either do a walkthrough with the client or you take a video, right? And send it to the person because if they're at work or whatever.
Yeah.
And that, the walkthrough is preferable, but if you're doing it during the day, it might not be whatever.
Yeah.
But what that does is 1, it makes sure both of you are on the same page, right? 2, it increases your chances of getting a tip. 3, it increases your chances of saying, hey, if you don't mind, can you leave me a positive review, right? And so this person went on, he had no reviews. Now he has like, I think over 70 reviews, and they're like, you know, there was one that was like, you guys.
It's always one.
Yeah, it's all, you know what I mean? It's always, it's just like, you know, what's the saying? Opinions are like.
Yeah. Well, you know, I
this is when we expect to hear the sirens.
The other thing too is, you know, if you see a sea of, you know, 4 and 5 star reviews and you have one star, you usually know that's not the typical experience.
That's not the norm.
Yeah. So one of the things I think is amazing is many small business owners do a lot of work around the community. So not only are you coaching other small businesses and advocating and doing that work, but you also are into music and film. So, and you use your voice to talk about domestic violence. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So, in line with, you know, I've always been an artist, right? So Daniel Laurent, or I'm known as DL, because when I would say Daniel Laurent in a club with loud music, and people would be like, Daniel who? Daniel Laurent? And they'd be like, are you Haitian? I'm like, I'm not Haitian. And I'm like, oh, Daniel Laurent. And every time people introduce me, Daniel Laurent, I'm like, that's not how, just DL, right? So, but, you know, I've put out songs. You know, my most popular song is Masterpiece, that it used the Cheers theme song, and I flipped it and wrote about Boston as a metaphor, right? So 3 different verses about like different street signs, and made them name some people. I talked about like clubs and made them people, and like the train stops and made them people. So that's what I'm most known for, I think. But I think, you know, I always wanted to, like what I said about the businesses, finding a void, right? And then trying to fill that. I come from people who I was inspired by. So whether it was, you know, Rakim or Nas or Jay or Royce the 5'9" or Big L or Big Pun, you know, Ice Cube, these people that did something that I wasn't, and Tretch from Naughty by Nature, right? These people that were able to use their voice and twist words to make them work and to create a story that I was inspired by, right? And I knew that I couldn't do what they did, but it inspired me to try to find my own voice. So I live by that. So as an artist, it's important for me to try to shed some little nugget in something, right? And I listen to people where, like, you know, say it's a conscious rapper, right? And the whole song is, don't do drugs and don't hit your woman and go to college. And it's like, all right, guys, this is when the violin plays, right? And you don't want to be preached to unless you're necessarily going to a service, right? If you're listening to music, you kind of want to just like vibe out, right? So I try to put the medicine in the candy as much as possible. So this particular song that you mentioned is Cry For Me. And I wrote the song, the beat kind of spoke to me, the chorus spoke to me. I wrote the song. It's not heavy domestic violence in the song, but there's little like nuggets of, that's problematic, right? And you know, just being transparent, I wanted to make a song that wasn't heavy where you heard it and you felt like jumping off a bridge. I wanted to be something where you like wanted to listen to it. Sonically, it sounded good. And so I listened to a lot of Love the Way You Lie with Eminem and Rihanna. I listened to See You Again by Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth. And that was kind of the thought of like, okay. And Eminem was way more graphic in what he was saying, right? And I feel like he has made his bones in being a certain type of artist and using a certain language, right? So like, I was like, well, I don't have that. I don't have that carte blanche, so let me tone it back a little bit. But there's certain things that I said in it where, you know, you're on the phone more frequent, texting back and forth, privacy most secret. You know what they say about the closest? Yeah, deepest. Fear losing you and humility's increasing. Can't control it. Something that I've grown with. Women constantly like to control-ish. My love was jail, but you paroled it. When we're together, I feel whole-ish. Relationships ain't easy, really starting to take its toll-ish. If I can't have you, you know the rest of it. My heart hurts, leaving me in a deficit. Pain so bad when I leave, feeling my chest and ish. Marriage is eulogized. I could see the death in it, right? So that's the last verse. I wanted the song to be little nuggets of red flags and problematic verbiage, right, that people often ignore, unfortunately. And I wanted the video to be a hyperbole of everything that is in the song. And so I wrote the short film. It's like 20 minutes. And it's, it's real examples of how something small, if you're dealing with someone that has some insecurities, can just escalate. And there's a physical stuff. And I was mindful when I wrote it that I didn't want to show violence, to the woman in the video, right? And I was actually in the beginning going to show a woman being abused and a man being abused in two different, kind of like a split screen, because the reality is men are abused also, right? And it's not reported as much, so the numbers are skewed, but it still happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really want to have the backlash of, what about men, and we're abused too. And it's like, I know, right? But it's disproportionately impacting who it's impacting. So, and I was gonna also write the film where she was abusing me and doing really nasty stuff, and just like it was gonna show hitting, everything, right? Sexual, everything. And then at the very end of it, it would be like a flip where I was doing that to her. And I was like, nah, I'd rather just keep it, because I don't want, I think that's thought-provoking and whatever. It's kind of like Sixth Sense at the very end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, holy cannoli.
Yeah.
But I was like, let me just keep it very clean. And I'm proud of it. I think that it's taught me a lot. And, I've being transparent, I've had some situations happen. There's been some relationships that has been severed, I guess, over it. I thought that I was doing something that was noble and outside of myself and a good thing, and it would be embraced and promoted a little differently and cause conversation, and people would like kind of take it as a tool and champion it. And I'm feeling like people kind of like, oh, that's a great job. And then, so it's just weird, right? But what I've realized is it's not a fun subject. It's not warm and fuzzy, and not everyone is willing to talk about it. Not everyone wants to talk about it when I'm ready to talk about it, right? And as much as I love Law and Order SVU, there's some people that don't watch it. And so from doing this film and doing a song, I've been in more spaces with survivors, and they're talking and just listening, where some people, and not asking you, because it might be TMI. Well, it definitely is TMI. But, some of the listeners, right, we have certain things that we may do where, like, I keep hitting the microphone, where, after we take a shower and lotion and put deodorant on, we get in the bed and we don't have any clothes on, right? And we sleep that way. The survivors that I've been listening to, one in particular, she never sleeps in the nude because of all the trauma and sexual assault that she has, and she's been sex trafficked and everything. So the very basic thing that others will just find normal, for her, like, she has to have layers of clothing on, right? And that broke my heart of like, wow, like, I never thought of that. And as much as I watch Law and Order and I love Olivia Benson and the characters and Ice-T and all that stuff, people that have gone through that and they know what that feels like, they refuse to watch it. Even though they understand it's doing some good in the world,
Sure.
they refuse. So I had to realize that, it's something that it's
like a conversation that you feel is important.
Yeah.
And you want to use your voice to advocate for that, and hopefully that it will do some good and it will help people that have experienced that have a way to cope, or that somebody's listening, somebody cares.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to men in particular, right? Because I think a lot of times, especially in these spaces I've been in, is women talking to women.
Yeah.
And like almost trauma bonding and healing through that.
Yeah.
But the people who are perpetrating it aren't in the room and are still continuing to do it.
Yeah.
And it breaks like I did something with young people recently, and there was probably a 15 or 16-year-old, and she loved the film and said, she herself was a victim of sexual assault and a survivor. And I'm like, she's like,
Yeah.
my goal was to not hear that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yikes. So I know going forward, before I go into these rooms, I need to take a second, take a beat, and prepare for things that just may come out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I certainly commend you for, being out there and advocating for your community and, the folks in it, and, helping in ways and things that are meaningful to you. So I certainly appreciate that and value that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything, how are you promoting your film?
So I submitted it to a bunch of film festivals, and it's in, I think, 6 film festivals now that it was announced. I won Best Short with Dreamcatcher's Film Festival recently.
Congrats.
Thank you. And just the other day, it was announced that it's going to be in the Roxbury Film Festival, which means the world to me, being from Roxbury and seeing like this is a festival that they're very intentional about the films that they put in and the messaging, and they have it. So the same way you have your episodes like themed, right?
Yes.
They're very mindful of like whether it's like social impact or, and so for it to be featured in that, and this is my first attempt at it, I'm like, wow, so the film, because of the film festivals, it's not public, right? It's not online, but the music video is on YouTube. It's on my website, DanielLaurent.com.
Well, and we'll definitely share the links. Yeah, share the links.
And I think that the music video is just a very short, condensed version of the film. The film just adds more context and layers, and but it's important, and I think that I implore people to and even bring it back to small businesses. It's important to not have a cause, right? But something that you believe in and support that you can align yourself with.
Yes.
So if you are a makeup artist, right? And I'm not saying this for people to like, oh, that's perfect. That's a perfect marketing strategy.
It has to speak to your heart.
It speaks to your heart.
It has to speak to your heart.
If you are a person where you yourself have been abused before, right? And you've gotten out of that, thank God, and you've gotten out of it. And you're a makeup artist and you're a lash technician, or, you do hair, you're a hairstylist. It's dope if you can align with whether it's Mother's Day and you're specifically catering to women who are survivors and making them feel beautiful for a day, right? Or if you have a boutique store and every year prom time, you're picking what, young people that have exuded greatness, right? Or have gotten good grades or done community service or whatever, and you adorn them in a free outfit, a free whatever. And it's just like, it feels really good, and it's just good for the ecosystem.
Yeah.
It's be the change that you want to see in the world. And I literally have that quote in front of my door. So every time I walk out, that's what I see. And, I know that the music business in particular is nasty and shady and cutthroat, and people are not honorable. Politics is very, similar in a lot of ways. But I believe that you can be mindful of how you conduct your business and be fair and honorable, and don't make people feel like they got taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Like if you come here and I have my hat and I say it's $25 and you give me $25 and you say thank you and you leave, it's an exchange and you feel good about it. Not like, oh, let me take your $25. I'll send you your hat tonight. And now it's 6 months later and you're emailing me and now it's not being responded to. And now you feel, that doesn't have
That's
to
not
happen.
good business.
And the only thing I can do is control how I do it. And hopefully people can see
Well, and
Yeah.
I hope that you will continue doing what you're doing now with your community and helping those small business owners who may not be seeing those small details, because a lot of times, let's face it, the small business owners in the day-to-day operation, you're doing so
Sure.
many things, it is very easy for you to miss something,
Yeah.
where somebody who just walks in, who is observant and pays attention to, can say this, this, and this, because I do it every day. You
Yeah.
do it every day.
Yeah.
Right? So look at the camera and tell folks, before we wrap up,
Mhm.
where they can find all of your stuff, how they reach you, how they follow you,
Uh,
all the good stuff.
Pressure. So, I think, so social media, obviously everyone's on, right? But, so Instagram, Daniel Laurent, do you have the name? You'll have the spelling,
I do.
right? So Daniel Laurent, SME, so Sam, Mary, Egg. And then Black Dollar on Instagram is Black Dollar 7 US. And then on my website, daniellorent.com, and then the Black Dollar website, blackdollarus.com. And on the Black Dollar website, it has like the why, it has the merchandise, the clothing, it has the music, it has the services that I provide, because I do culture training and all that stuff too. But yeah, and then YouTube, I'm on there also. And then also Wedlocked and Loaded, which is a podcast that me and my wife have. And it's not necessarily a marriage podcast, but it's talking about a lot of stuff. Some of the stuff is kind of wild, but we're best friends. And
Yeah.
so we have those discussions. And
She's beautiful, by the way.
she's all right. I mean,
Yeah, right.
she's, depends on what day.
She's beautiful.
But Wedlocked and Loaded, you can find that on Instagram also, and that's on all streaming platforms. And there's some other stuff that I'm working on, but I'm all over the place.
Yeah. And I appreciate you really driving down from Boston. I really appreciate that. And you have been a amazing, very fascinating guest.
I want to say something to you.
Yeah.
And I meant to say this earlier, so I'm gonna now throw it, because I thought about this coming here as I was listening to the shows. Talking about intentionality, I appreciate you having this podcast and being very intentional about bringing different people and different perspectives and different business models, right, for people to hear. And whether it's 3 people that listen, 30 people that listen, 130 or 1,300, I think it's one person that hears that and it changes some things, right? And, there's 99 no's that we'll get, but it's that one yes. It's
You
like,
make me cry.
and it's important. And, the drive, it's easy to be like, it's an hour and some change. I'm not coming, and, can we do Zoom? But I'm like, you know what? Like, I want to come. I looked and saw what it looked like, and that was it. And so, to your credit, that's the differentiator for me that wanted to make me come, because I saw how professional it looked. I saw the editing. I heard the sound, and I was like, okay, if this was like a cable broadcast, and no disrespect,
Sure.
because there's a market for that, and I've done that before.
Sure.
But right now in my life, I don't have the time for it.
Yeah.
But I love that what you're doing and what you're building and the consistency of it. And it's not you're putting out a show and then 2 months later another one's coming out.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, like you're boom. And
We're
you're
really
growing it.
we're
So
really
thank
working.
you.
Yeah, thank you. We're really working hard, and we really want to help people. So I appreciate that very, very much.
I'm giving you your flowers.
Thank you.
Yes.
For those of you who have stayed with us, we appreciate it. Please subscribe, like, comment, and let us know who you'd like us to bring on our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye. Oh, you're the best. Are you a business owner? Are ready to get your startup? Well, start it. Have a burning question you would like us to answer? Want to know more about the services we offer? Or register for upcoming workshops and events? Looking to book a guest speaker? Or would like to be a guest on the Practical Biz podcast? Visit our website at stellarbusinessconcepts.com.